Hey, welcome to the first issue of Sound Art Sundays. Today we're going to look at the beginning of sound art, before we even called it sound art. It's sort of like sound art's prehistory, its seedlings, how it all starts. The seeds for sound art are planted at a really specific moment in history. 1878, Thomas Edison creates the cylinder phonograph. Sound can be recorded.
Mary had a little lamb, its fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go.
You also, around the same time, become aware of an intensified urban life. The Industrial Revolution has been firmly established. We have factories, discordant sounds, new noises in our lives, not just the idyllic sounds of nature anymore. The impact of discordant urban sounds comes first. Technology and access to recording, it's going to take a little while. So artists play with these discordant urban sounds in a very old school way. They make instruments that will make the noises. In 1913, futurist artist Luigi Russolo writes a manifesto that says, let's embrace some new sounds. And he also builds the instruments to make them. His instruments are called in tono rumore, and they make 27 different sounds. Sounds that are called things like howling, crackling, buzzing, exploding, referencing the noise of industry and the war that's about to break out in 1914. Want to hear them in concert? Another 20th century art movement was also very interested in sound, but they liked the unexpected happenings of sound when the element of chance was thrown into the mix. The art movement is called Dada, and one of its artists, Marcel Duchamp, was known for his ready-mades, taking already existing objects and tweaking them in such a way that we look at them in a whole new light. Like this urinal turned on its side and called fountain, and this putting together of a bicycle wheel and a stool, rendering both useless. So Marcel says, how can I play with sound to visualize it and to make a whole new language? Here's what he does. He takes 25 different musical notes, writes them on slips of paper, puts the slips of paper into a hat. Then he takes a dictionary definition of the word imprint, breaks it down into syllables. For each syllable, he pulls a note out of the hat and attaches it to that syllable. Then, when it's sung back, it sounds like this. Marcel Duchamp greatly influenced another early pioneer of sound, a man named John Cage. In August 1952, one of John Cage's composition was first performed, and it was going to radically change the way people thought about sound. It was performed in a rustic little venue at the end of a dirt road in a forest somewhere in upstate New York. Those are details that become important. The audience includes composers, members of the New York Philharmonic Orchestra, other people in the music industry who have made this drive out to rural New York State to see what's going on with this upstart John Cage. The pianist comes out onto the stage and sits at the bench in front of the piano. The audience is hushed and expectantly waiting. The pianist reaches out and closes the lid of the piano and then starts a stopwatch. 4 minutes and 33 seconds go by. No music is played. The world-renowned pianist stops the watch, stands up, and leaves the stage. Members of the audience are outraged. They stand up, they walk out. Silence for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. What? But think about what the audience would have heard if they were really listening. They would have heard themselves shuffling around in their seats, the sound of their own breathing, their footsteps on the wooden floor. And if they were quieter still, perhaps the wind in the trees in the forests nearby, crackling of branches, crickets chirping. What made John Cage compose a piece of 4 minutes and 33 seconds of silence? Part of the influence comes from an experience he had in an anechoic chamber at Harvard University. These chambers absorb all sound. It's meant to be absolute silence in there. And I want you to realize that 4 minutes and 33 seconds translates to 273 seconds. 273 is the number of absolute zero in temperature. But even though that room was meant to make complete, absolute silence, John Cage realized he could still hear his heartbeat. There was no such thing as silence. The other big influence was his friend, the painter, Robert Rauschenberg, who had just completed a series of completely white paintings. But if you stand in front of those white paintings long enough, you'll see the white changes when the light changes, when shadows go over them, when people are nearby. Those paintings are no longer plain white painted canvases. They're something else. Canvases painted with white house paint are empty until they're not. And 4 minutes and 33 seconds of complete silence is also not silent. All the examples we looked at today are still deeply connected to musical traditions. They rely on scores or instruments, musical notation. They're performed in concert halls. But in 4 minutes and 33 seconds, John Cage is breaking with those traditions that are embedded in traditional music. He's saying the sound around us is just as important. Get out of your concert halls, experience sound anywhere. And in the 60s, an artist named Max Neuhaus did just that. He invited people to meet him for a performance on a corner in downtown New York City. When people showed up at the corner expecting to attend a concert, Max stamped their hands with the word "listen" and led them around the city to listen for the sounds. We're going to leave it here at this moment in the 1960s. Artists are primed and ready to use this new medium of sound in art making. Sound is going to get used differently next week. As Max Neuhaus says, in music, sound is the work. In sound art, sound is the means by which I make the artwork. We'll take a look at that next week.